Kathy. Our next speaker is always an absolute joy to listen to. His CV is quite lengthy, so I'm only going to give you a very tiny abridged version of it. Professor Peter Swannell was born near London and began his academic career academic life as an engineer. He completed his PhD in 1966 before coming to Australia as a senior lecturer in engineering at the University of Queensland. He was the Vice Chancellor here from 1996 until 2003. He's held many chairmanship positions, but he's currently the chairman of the board of the Empire Theatre and board member of the Heritage Bank. That's a very tiny bit from Peter's CV. Without further ado, please make him very welcome, Professor Peter Swannell.
That's good, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm delighted to be here and thank you so much for putting up with me. I'm going to talk to you in a way which may be slightly surprising, because I know nothing about clever things and I'm awfully bad at strategy and all that stuff. What I'm interested in is talking about individuals and trying to convince people that in fact we build our society by our individual efforts and choices, and how we try to understand what our neighbour is saying, and how we try to be honest about ourselves, and how we try to recognise that it's only by being open with what we believe and what we believe they believe that we can actually get anywhere. So I warn you, I'm not very good at generic statements. I'm perfectly happy with individual controversial statements, and I'm delighted if you find what I say completely incomprehensible. The whole point is that we shall enjoy interacting with characteristics which make up individuals, and then if we understand individuals, we might understand ourselves as a group. So I've got some slides up here, and I'm going to try to make it work, which is always difficult, like that. Good. I'm talking about that. I don't see anything special about talking about Toowoomba, except that it's the best place in the whole world. But I believe what I have to say may have relevance to all sorts of things. This is my thesis, that everyone matters. Everyone matters. Everyone. Everyone can help to make it happen. And we all know that the whole is supposed to be greater than the sum of the parts. I've heard that said to me so many times, and it's utterly true. But if you don't have the parts, you can't have the whole. And so I prefer to talk about the parts, and then observe that by being honest, we may sometimes be able to integrate those into wholes which are better than the sum of the parts. Where have I gone with that? Oh, that's very good, isn't it? Let's talk about individual things then. I'm going to talk about the person I know more about than anybody else, and that's me. And I'm going to use that absurdly to make some points, I hope. Trust me. Right. I'm 134 years of age. I only tell you that because it's important that you should therefore realise that my perspective is of that of a worn-out old fool. And you may be surprised to know that I'm 134, but I nearly am. I was an engineer, and a normal response to people when they learn that you're an engineer is they say, engineer, oh dear. Oh. Engineers are of course not supposed to do anything except tighten bolts and get grease on their hands, and they're generally not interested in the arts or anything else. Well, hard luck, I am. I was the Vice Chancellor of USQ, and that's a very dangerous thing to be because the usual response is academics, oh dear. I found that to be true over 40 years of working in universities, that you only have to tell people that you are an academic and they immediately assume that you're irrelevant, and I rather like that because you can surprise people sometimes. I'm deeply involved with the Empire Theatre. I love the Empire Theatre. I've been chairman of the company that runs it for the last 14 years. But unfortunately, when you tell them that you're interested in the theatre, nothing works. They say, Artie, oh dear, you're not supposed to know anything about anything. and you're certainly hopeless at figures if you're an arty, but I've found that there's a mixture of people and that we can easily form wrong views. I'm a director of Heritage Bank, which of course is pretty awful because we don't trust banks, that's what it said. And I believe by and large you shouldn't trust banks. They're depressingly necessary places, but you have to be very careful with them. They tend to make money if you're not careful. Touching still, I was chairman of the Queensland Museum, which itself is a bit of a worry because, of course, Ricky, they know you're involved with the museum. There's got to be a way to do that. They tell you you're living in the past, and you probably are. But there's not much wrong with living in the past because you can actually learn some things from the past. I was the director of the Queensland Orchestra, and they tell me, how can a tone-deaf engineer be director of the Queensland Orchestra? I'll tell you why. Because, of course, I can help them make money. And if I help them make money, they make better music because of that. I'm involved with the Toowoomba Clubhouse. And sitting in the front here is a guy called Luke Terry. I haven't known him very long, but I've enjoyed every moment of it. What's the Toowoomba Clubhouse? You might well ask. Toowoomba Clubhouse is an organisation that cares for people who are recovering from a mental disorder, who are indeed held with a mental disorder. And we try very hard to actually do things. And when I met Luke in the clubhouse, which is near St Luke's Church in the middle of the city, I suddenly realised that here was a group of people who did things instead of talking about it. And so much more difficult to do things than it is to talk about it. And that's a key to what I like to think about the way we interact. I've been married to the same woman for 50 years. Good heavens. She's up there. It's quite good being married to the same woman for 50 years because you can wear the same suit and the same shirt every day of your life. And she stopped me walking away from the microphone. I'm a lapsed Anglican, and I might say to you, when I'm looking at Bishop Rob, it's very difficult to be a lapsed Anglican. They're very welcoming for lapsed Anglicans, but I'm a lapsed Anglican. And I write a weekly column for the Chronicle. That reaction is, say no more. If you write for the Chronicle, you're stuffed. It's as simple as that. Now, let's move on. I want to tell you some things that I'm not concerned about. And when I say I am not, I don't want to be personal in a sense. I believe there are many things that when we're trying to build a community, we should not be concerned about. For example, grandiose slogans and pious hopes. I'm simply not interested in grandiose slogans. And I might come back to that before I finish. We don't build partnerships by saying we're going to build partnerships. We don't become an educational centre for anywhere at all by saying we're going to be. We become that by doing something and building from the individual upwards and outwards to achieve. I don't care where you went to school. Never heard of it anyway. It doesn't matter where you went to school. What matters is actually you made the best of being there. I don't care what the colour of your skin is, or what your first language is. I don't care what your religious beliefs are. Quick they were, they've gone already. What I do care about is that we value that religious belief, be it none or something or in formation. And I really think that's very important too. I don't care whether you're male or female, for the very simple reason that we need both parts. And it's very important that we remember that. Tony Abbott should remember that. I'm not concerned about whether you're straight or gay. I think whether you're straight or gay, you're equally valuable. We have a gay daughter who's the most brilliant woman I know in my life, and I love her more than anything else. She also knows how to work this. I don't care whether you're married or single, as long as you're happy. As long as you're happy. I don't care what your politics are. I prefer there to be a certain kind, but let's leave that aside. I don't care what your politics are, but what I beg you is to actually think about it. Actually think about it. Don't turn up at the polling booth and wonder whether it's a state or a federal election, for example. Actually think about it. I don't care how much money you have. The most wise thing that's ever been said, as far as I'm concerned, is a man is as rich as his needs are few. You're not rich because you've got as much money as Clive Palmer, but I tell you what, those who think the money doesn't matter are usually people who've got too much of it. So it's worth just remembering that, but it doesn't really matter. I don't care whether you support the Broncos. I just slip that in because I don't want to be serious all the time. As long as you allow me to support the Broncos if I want to. Now, having said that, I have to say to you that it's a contradiction because I am concerned about those things. And I'm concerned about them not because I care whether you're straight or gay, but that unless I understand whether you're straight or gay, I will not understand you and be able to communicate with you. So in one sense, it's quite wrong to say that I'm not concerned. What is certain is that I should not be biased unreasonably by that rubbish. I don't like grandiose slogans at the moment for that. Okay, so I don't believe you achieve things by making generalised statements. I hinted at that just now. You don't become a model city because well-meaning people get together with like-minded people and say that's what's going to happen. It doesn't. Saying you're going to be a model city does not make it happen. You're not going to achieve peace by saying it would be a good idea, but still behave confrontationally. You know, I demand that you and I love each other does not work. Does not work. You're not living in harmony just because you're willing to compromise. Sometimes we have to compromise. But one of the best ways to live in harmony is to accept a difference and live with that difference and multiply the good things that come out of that difference. I'm going for time. I've heard people say a few strange things, and I'd like to suggest that you may have heard some of these things. I've not got enough time, because I've got no time to do that. That's rubbish. We've all got time if we think about how we plan our time. They're only doing it for themselves. How many times have you heard it said, he only goes to there because he's going to meet some influential people and he's going to make money? Well, I don't see anything wrong with doing it partly for yourself, if you understand you're not only doing it for that reason. Here's the most famous thing that was said to me when I was a young lecturer at the University of Birmingham. One of my best friends in the whole world, an extremely distinguished man, who went on to be Vice-Chancellor of the University of Dundee. He got on the wrong bus. And we were talking one day, many years ago, and he said, I'm not going to be involved in this, Peter, because we can't help everybody. Now, I'll tell you what, that's the biggest load of rubbish I've heard ever. And it's a shame, because this man is a brilliant, brilliant, caring man. It is not true that you have to help everybody before you help anybody. We have to realise that we can't help everybody. We have to do the best we can with the results we have. Then we get the, they don't need my help. Well, I ask you the question, have you asked them? Have you asked them? That's a very important question to ask people. Do you need my help? If you like, authorise them to be helped. I'm not clever enough. Oh. Surprise yourself. You can surprise yourself every day how you can get along when you think you're not clever enough. I've also heard people say these things. I'm not strong enough. Surprise yourself. It's amazing what you can do when the pressure is on. I can't afford it. It might cost less than you feel. What's in it for me? Well, I've almost touched on that already. Give it a go and find out. And then you find something happens that's good for you. There's nothing wrong with that. It might even be good for the people you're working with and talking to. I can't stand people like that. Oh, really? I don't know. They can't stand people like us. How often do you hear that? You know, oh, they don't like people like us. Oh, we're this, we're that or the other, they don't mix with people like that. Well, who told you that? Listen very carefully and see if indeed it's true that they can't stand people like us. Sometimes then I say we hear the wrong messages, and sometimes deliberately we hear the wrong messages because that excuses us from acting and doing anything. So I say to you that we have to make sure that the message we're hearing is the one that really is fruitful. Now, I want to finish off, just last a little bit, and I think I've got 10 minutes or less. I want to use this man. I don't know if you know, have heard his name, Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is a Princeton University graduate. He's 49 years of age. I used to be 49 a couple of years ago. He's the founder and chairman of Amazon.com. I doubt whether many people haven't heard of Amazon.com. His net worth is about $25 billion. So he's not entirely poor. He recently bought the Washington Post, as a matter of fact, for $250 million. Now, I don't care all about that, but what I do care is that I happened to find the graduation address he gave to the graduating students at Princeton in 2010, and at the risk of you thinking that I'm plagiarising something, I'm going to make some quotes. He called his address, "We are what we choose." It was brilliant, and I'm glad I might say, acknowledge that everything I say from here on in is his thoughts, but they happen to be mine too, which is why I chose to give them. We also remember, of course, that if we steal ideas from one person, that's plagiarism. If we steal from a lot of people, that's research. So let's go on. If you want to check out that, you can check out that address. You can see the author of that famous quote. Okay, what Jeff Bezos started off by saying was telling a story about his grandmother, who was a heavy smoker. One day, as a kid, travelling with his grandparents in their car, he very carefully worked out that at 2 minutes per puff, she'd taken 9 years off her life. And he told the students that. And then he said, my grandmother burst into tears. And his grandfather, who was driving the car, stopped and said this to him: "Jeff, one day you'll understand that it's harder to be kind than to be clever." And that simple thing that his granddad said to him, and Professor Bezos explained so clearly, seems to me to be fundamentally important. He said to the students, you have many gifts, and the important thing is how will you use those gifts? What choices will you make? Here are some of those choices. Will inertia be your guide, or will you follow your passions? Will you follow dogma, or will you try to be original? You don't have to be very smart to decide what's the good thing that he wants to hear, but it's worth contrasting these various things, because they come upon us all every day of our lives. Oh, we're too busy. Oh, we don't do it that way. Oh, he doesn't like me. But Jeff Bezos went on. Will you choose a life of ease, or a life of service and adventure? Will you wilt under criticism, or will you follow your convictions? I promise you that the longer you live, the more you have to live with criticism. That's the way it is, and it's not a bad thing either. Will you bluff it out when you're wrong, or will you apologise? The most important thing that people can do to create harmony and to make an impact is to say I'm wrong, is to apologise for what I've done wrong. Will you guard your heart against rejection, or will you act when you fall in love? It's a very unengineering piece of language, but I quite like it. I actually quite like it. Will you play it safe, or will you be a little bit swashbuckling? When it's tough, will you give up, or will you be relentless? There is a time to give up, but it's often a lot long after the time that you thought you had to give up, and it's worth trying once more. It's worth trying once more. Will you be a cynic or will you be a builder? I'm a bit of a cynic. I have to be very careful that I don't get too cynical, because it's easy to give the wrong impression. I'm cynical because I'm by nature such a wonderful, soft, lovely kind of liar that you have to be very careful, though, that you don't give the wrong impression. Will you be clever at the expense of others, or will you be kind? I was incredibly clever at the expense of others when I was a schoolboy, because I was very good at maths at school. And I used to think that kids who couldn't add numbers together were absolute complete idiots. I used to think that the people in England who failed the 11 plus examination must be really thick, till I found out that one day the next door school to me was a school where kids went when they failed the 11 plus. And one of their pupils was called Julian Breen, who went on to be one of the greatest classical guitarists of all time. That we must not judge too easily on these things. And in the end, as I say, we are our choices. Let me just put a little smiley up there. No, I don't want to. Oh, crossing the wrong line, that's why. Oh, there it is. What I wanted to say to you is not that I don't realise the need for partnership, the need for interaction between communities, but what I say to you is if we spent less time making generic statements of expectation and pious hope, and actually talked interactively and thought interactively with our neighbours, the chances are we'd actually do more good in the long run. Thank you for listening to me.